Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 2021 Spring District Meeting Update. My name is Matt Winkle, Associate Director, Office of Career Tech, and I'll be one of the facilitators for today's meeting. We know that everybody's probably become a little bit accustomed to the general rules for this particular format. Thank you for being patient, as we still feel this is probably the most accurate way for us to provide information for all of our stakeholders at a large platform, while also providing a recording. So please keep that in mind, that today's presentation is being recorded. It is being held on a Microsoft Teams live event, since we do have oftentimes attendance that can reach 100 plus. So in order to communicate with us, you will need to ask questions through the chat function today. I encourage you at any time that you do have a question to please use that function and record your questions, and then we'll get to a place where we could get those answered from that standpoint. We again kind of apologize. We understand that this isn't the most personal way to deliver information, but and we cannot wait until we actually start getting back to face-to-face involvement in your fall and spring meetings. And we're looking forward to that opportunity, hopefully in the near future. But in the meantime, appreciate the patience on being on this today. This is a Teacher Appreciation Week. I did see, and I know spent 14 years in the classroom, and part of what inspired me to become an ag teacher was my ag educator. And my dad was an ag instructor, and certainly, I think ag teachers have played a really important role in my life, as I'm sure they really have many of you. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank everybody for your continued service in providing opportunities for students, especially over what we've seen over the last 14 to 15 months. So thank you, everybody on the call today for our ag teachers. Ryan, if you would, let's go to the second slide. And today we have a pretty robust agenda, and a lot of the opportunities that we have today are to listen to our stakeholders. And again, that's a great way for us to provide a platform that you get a chance to hear from our Team Ag Ed members. And so we're going to hear from all of those folks that are listed there on the left-hand side. And then we're also going to provide our traditional kind of three-circle model updates around agriculture education, SAE, and of course FFA from that standpoint. So this is kind of the format and the topics that we're going to cover today. And Ryan, if we would, let's go to the next slide. And we'll actually kick it off by introducing our director. It's not every time that we've had an opportunity to have our director attend a district meeting from that standpoint. So that is kind of an advantage of us going into this virtual platform. And I know those of you that have been teaching for a while, you certainly are familiar with the name and the face of Leah Amstutz. Those of you that maybe have recently entered the teaching profession, just wanted to give you a kind of a background on Leah. And Leah was a former ag instructor of almost right around 9 years in Northwestern Ohio. Once she left the classroom, she came to the Department of Education, and she spent some time as program specialist and also executive secretary for a short period of time with Ohio FFA Association before she was promoted to assistant director, where she served as the Ohio FFA state advisor. She then was promoted to the associate director for the Office of Career Technical Education. And has recently, I guess within the last 14 months or so, has been our director of CTE. So we're very fortunate to have a director of CTE that has both classroom experience and, from an ag ed point of view, understands the industry of agriculture and also the value of agriculture education and the Ohio FFA Association. So with that being said, Leah, I'll go ahead and turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Matt, for that introduction. And I do just want to build and echo on what Matt was sharing about Teacher Appreciation Week and the work that you guys are doing on a daily basis. And I would say that, you know, as we have worked in our office through the past, 13, 14 months, I think we've all garnered a greater appreciation for what each and every one of you guys are doing on a daily basis, especially through this pandemic. And so your work does not go unnoticed. And agriculture education, I feel, is in a really good place in the state because of the great work that you guys do on a daily basis. So Matt asked me just to kind of, and that's, as Matt said, that this is probably, if we were not in a pandemic, I probably wouldn't have the opportunity to engage in all of these different meetings that I've been able to from a virtual standpoint, which sometimes I get a little challenged with my schedule. And whenever I have the opportunity, though, I do want to take the time to just kind of share what's going on in the landscape of career technical education from the national perspective, and then just talk a little bit about what we have going on here in Ohio, and then as we look to the future. And so when we look at the national direction of career technical education, prior to the pandemic, we had the reauthorization of Perkins V, which really is the federal policy arm that really drives the direction of career technical education across the nation. And it was some time that it took to get that Perkins policy reauthorized. And so when it did, there was a lot of work to do. And Perkins V brought a lot of new initiatives with a really strong focus on equity, as well as career pathways, having multiple on and off ramps to provide a flexibility for those students that are in career technical education pathway programs. And then as well, really did a lot with work-based learning from that standpoint. Then the pandemic happened and really kind of maybe slowed a little bit of that work down, because everyone really had to just transition to supporting the day-to-day needs of districts, educators, to be able to still provide a quality education to our students across the nation and in the state of Ohio through that pandemic. And now that we maybe are beginning to see some, maybe light at the end of the tunnel, the focus on the national level, I can tell you based on the national meetings that I've been in, is that equity is probably even more important coming out of the pandemic. The pandemic really probably showed us greater gaps in terms of equitable access, engagement, in enrollment in CTE programs, as well as performance. And so there's really a lot of conversation, a lot of research, a lot of direction being provided by a lot of national partners on how do we really begin to look at closing these equity gaps from that standpoint. The other thing the pandemic has done is really had us shift in terms of thoughts in terms of workforce. Prior to the pandemic, it was very much about in-demand, high-wage, high-skilled jobs, and there was definitely core areas where we saw that economic growth. Some of those switched very quickly through the pandemic, and IT has probably, grown exponentially from the pandemic. Also, the need to have transferable skills at even a greater level from that standpoint. But the other thing the pandemic has showed us is this need for critical occupations. Those occupations that maybe necessarily don't fit some of that high wage, high skill, in demand components, but are critical for the health of citizens. For example, early child care, frontline workers, those type of occupations. And so those conversations are really, beginning to foster more on the national level of how do we speak about in-demand, high wage, but then how do we also speak to this critical occupation piece too, that the pandemic has showed us. And then the work-based learning initiatives, that continues to be a focus and continues. And again, I think the equity issues with work-based learning opportunities was even, grew even more during the pandemic. And when we look at the data with high school students engaging in work, it continues to decline annually. From that standpoint, over the last 20 years, we've had about a 20% decrease in students engaging in work. And the other component of that is that there's even lower numbers of engagement of students who come from maybe socially economic disadvantaged families. So that's kind of a lot of the national priorities when we look at CTE across the nation. In Ohio, I can say that those are the same things. and that the pandemic, we definitely have, focused on helping districts get through, this pandemic and continue to serve the students. But then we also are really focused on equity initiatives. We're working with the lead district in each career technical planning district. We've just provided virtually equity labs that are allowing, and we're working with district partners to review their data to identify those gaps between subgroups and special populations and begin to look at root causes and strategies on how to close those gaps. We also have an equity ambassador program for each lead district within a CTPD, where it's a train the trainer model. And then we also have an Equity for All grant that is actually open right now that your districts are more than welcome to apply for, and you can email your ag staff to get more information about that. We also are doing a lot with work-based learning and looking at supports and resources and how to stand up more work-based learning opportunities in the state of Ohio. How do we regionalize and how do we work with business partners within a regional setting to build stronger collaboration between the educational partners, whether that's a secondary or post-secondary partner with the businesses, and continue to stand up those opportunities. And you see the current administration, especially Lieutenant Governor Husted, very focused on career-focused education, very focused on standing up more opportunities for students to have internships. And there's a lot of programs that have just been released over the last couple months that are being driven by the Governor's Office of Workforce Transformation. And so that kind of like my segue into kind of successes. And the one thing I appreciate about agriculture education and some of these initiatives that I've talked about on the national and the state level is the work that each and every one of you do with supervised agriculture experiences, because you truly are providing work-based learning opportunities for your students and all of your students on a regular basis. And so you really are doing great work in that area. And just based on, my discussions that I've had with Matt over the past year and with the number of students that have applied for state degrees and American degrees, and looking at the data, you guys have continued to, supervise and work with those students during this pandemic so that they have those high quality work-based experiences, whether it's an internship, an entrepreneurship project, a school-based enterprise project. And so I just want to continue to say that is, I think, a very strong arm of agriculture education, and you guys do it right from that standpoint. The other thing too is I want to give a shout out to the ag team and the Ohio FFA staff. This past year has been really challenging for our career technical student organizations, but I can say that all of our organizations, and specifically, I think Ohio FFA has done a tremendous job on providing equitable opportunities for all FFA members across our state of Ohio in getting them access to either leadership activities or competitions. There's definitely been some challenges with all the COVID protocols and those type of things, but as you just kicked off the celebration and the end of your convention last week, a lot of success and a lot of students were honored because of the opportunities that we were able to provide them from an equitable standpoint. As we look into the next school year and think of challenges, as we continue to look at CTE delivery through the pandemic, I think we will continue to have to look at how do we continue to identify the learning lag with our students, and how do we provide intervention and remediation for those students so that we can close those performance gaps. And then I think as we go into next school year, I think that, from a career technical student organization standpoint, I think we'll continue to be challenged with, how do we deliver opportunities for students to engage in leadership events and the competitions and the different award programs, because I do believe that we will continue to have maybe some of these COVID protocols in place. And so how do you design a hybrid model that maybe builds on virtual and face-to-face, but in a way that is equitable for all students? And so I think those are some of the challenges that, as educators and as staff, that we will need to work together so that we can ensure that as we move into next school year, that our students truly have an opportunity to engage in all three of those circles, whether it's, you know, the CTSO, the classroom, or the supervised agriculture experience. Again, it's great to be with you this afternoon. I hope that this gives you a little bit of idea on some of the main initiatives that are happening on the national and state level. And if you ever have any questions about anything related to CTE here in the state of Ohio, feel free to reach out to me.
All right, Leah, thank you for that update, and thank you for spending some time out of your busy day to share some things with us. As of right now, I do not see any comments in this or questions in the comment or chat function. We can give it a few more seconds, Leah, but as of right now, I don't see any questions.
Well, again, thanks for having me today, and keep up the great work.
All right, thank you, Leah. And Ryan, I believe we can go to the next slide. There we go. And Sabrina, you can go ahead and provide us an update with OAE.
Yes, OAE would like to thank all the teachers during Teacher Appreciation Week, just like Matt said, for everything that we've been doing this week. We're going to keep our stuff short and sweet because we have conference coming up, and we will have our meeting, our general meeting during that. Just a reminder that OAE dues, as well as NAAE, OACTE, and ACTE membership dues are live and can be paid at any time through the OAE website. And I believe when this goes out after we're done, all of these should have links on them, so you can just click there and take you to the site so you can renew your membership. The OAE officer pathway nomination forms have been sent out to district chairs, and hopefully they have sent those to the districts. These are due May 15th. If you are interested in running for president-elect or AO pathway, I believe it's the bioscience pathway and natural resources pathway, or natural resources pathway, feel free to nominate yourself, or if you know of someone that you think would do a good job, you can nominate them as well. Again, those are due May 15th, and then we will have our election during the Ag Ed Summer Conference, and that will be held June 15th through 17th. It will be in person at OSU ATI, and we are still working on getting everything done. I know the link, or the information link and registration link, was supposed to be live. I don't know if it is yet. I know Brenda sent out something that we had been hacked, and so hopefully that will be up soon, so you can get your registration in for summer conference. The last thing we have is just a reminder that NAAE Region 4 conference, the meeting, or not conference, meeting, is going to be held virtual again this year. And so that will be held Monday, June 21st at 11 a.m. And the nice thing about it being held virtual is we actually can have more people participating. When we receive information about this, it will be sent out to you. We'll also put it on our Facebook page and through our newsletter. So keep checking those two places for information about upcoming events. And that is all I have.
All right, John, I think the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. John Henry, the Director of the School of Agricultural Education and Food Science at Central State University. And I think, when we established four-year agricultural degrees at Central State in 2016, we brought this tagline in of find new ways to grow. And I think 2020 and so far in 2021, it's forced all of us to find new ways to grow and new ways to do things and innovate in order to continue the work that we're doing. Ryan called me and said, make sure that you were about 3 to 5 minutes there, and I had several slides, so I'll move through this relatively quickly. First, I want to let everyone know that we are planning on attending the OAE Summer Conference on June 17th at Worcester. We'll have a technical session up there with one of our research faculty, so I hope that you all can attend that. Central State University, we have 4-year agricultural degrees, Bachelor of Science in Ag Ed licensure, Bachelor of Science in Ag Ed extension, Bachelor of Science in Sustainable Agriculture. I put up kind of a breakdown of the semester hours required for each of those degrees. Obviously, your general education courses, natural sciences, education for licensure and extension, Ag Ed specific courses, and then students will get between 22 and 32 agricultural content courses as well. And Leah mentioned about internships. We do have our experience courses where we try to force students out and to gain hands-on experience in the field. Ryan, you can flip to the next there. I get a lot of questions from ag teachers across the state as we present to schools with ag education programs about ways for their students in secondary career tech programs to earn college credit towards a 4-year degree. Central State does have a College Credit Plus program. It's a combination of online, hybrid, and in-person courses. We've put together a suggested curriculum for a student to follow in order to complete up to the first year or 30 semester hours of an Ag Ed degree, with some agricultural content courses embedded into that suggested 30-hour pathway. So if you're interested in getting your students college credit for the courses that they're taking in agriculture in your schools, then you can contact me directly and I will walk you through that process, or visit our website under prospective students where it talks about College Credit Plus, and you'll find admissions applications there. We can get your students enrolled and get them put into an online course, hopefully with you serving as kind of a facilitator of that and helping those students navigate that online curriculum in agriculture. Go ahead, Ryan. One of the benefits of a degree at Central State University is that right now, as a relatively new land grant institution, we have a lot of scholarship assistance available to students who enroll at Central State and study an agriculture-related degree. One of those, we offer a freshman merit scholarship, so any student coming in can earn up to $4,000 based on their GPA only. So $1,000 to $4,000 of scholarship assistance through freshman merit based on GPA at the time of admission. We also, as an undergraduate institution, we have 9 existing agricultural research faculty that offer undergraduate research assistantships. Students can work on campus with those research faculty and make anywhere from $12 to $15 an hour for up to 20 hours a week. And so it's kind of a unique experience for undergrads to be able to work side by side with those research faculty. In 2020, the USDA provided Central State University with $1.2 million of scholarship dollars for any student who is pursuing a 4-year degree in agriculture. We have those scholarships renewed and available in 2021. And quite honestly, we have more scholarship dollars for students to study in agriculture than we have students to give them away to. So if you have students who need financial assistance and are pursuing a degree in agriculture, send them our way and we will get them on a scholarship program of some kind. In addition to those USDA scholarships, we have external scholarships supported by the Ohio Farm Bureau Foundation and the Ohio Agribusiness Association scholarship that we've given away for the last 4 years now. So all kinds of financial assistance. We want to make sure that finances is not a barrier to a student graduating with a degree in agriculture or a related field. We have grown, Central State has grown significantly in its land grant programs over the last year and a half. And one of those ways that we've grown is by establishing regional extension offices throughout the state of Ohio. And so if you are in one of these geographical locations, then you can work with our regional extension associates, in which are housed at community colleges throughout the state. In the Northwest region, we're working with Northwest State Community College in Archibald, and they have an associate's degree in agronomy that aligns very well with Ag Ed and Sustainable Ag at Central State to create a 4-year transfer pathway. In Northeastern Ohio, it's at Stark State Community College in downtown Canton, where our offices are. And we're working on finalizing some articulation and transfer pathway agreements with Stark State. In Southeast Ohio, Hocking College, which is in the New Lexington campus in Perry County. We've rented office space there and have a nice transfer pathway with their associate's degree in agroecology. In Southwestern Ohio at Edison State Community College in Eaton, we have offices at that campus and a nice transfer pathway from their 2-year associate's degree in agriculture. And then currently we have in the works, which is still pending, it's not final yet, but in the South, we are housing a regional extension office at Southern State Community College in Hillsboro. They currently do not have a 2-year associate's degree in agriculture. However, we're working on a partnership that would allow students to enroll in their Associate of Science degree program, associate's degree program, and earn agricultural content courses at Central State through that transfer pathway. In each of those regions, we have extension educators in ag, food, and natural resources, 4-H, family consumer science, and community and economic development. And then we really work hard with our agricultural research faculty to kind of find ways to assist and provide resources to ag educators, specifically on those topics that are listed there in soil and water quality, with entomologists. It's doing research with honeybee and pollination, an aquaponics facility now, natural products, food science, and nutrition and health, and industrial hemp. So those are some of the key topics areas, and we plan on expanding a little bit on the research that's taking place in those areas at the summer conference on June 17th during our technical session. So we hope that you would attend that, and if you're interested in learning more about Central State University, you can email me directly at jhenry@centralstate.edu. Again, I want to thank you guys for allowing me to have this platform to communicate with ag teachers as travel has been difficult. So I appreciate it. If you have questions, I am always available.
All right, thank you, John. It does appear that we have a question that was put in the chat for you, John. The CCP credentials, does the teacher who would be hosting the course need a master's in agriculture?
What we have done is we have agreed that students can enroll in our online courses, so they would actually be taught by Central State faculty, but we would use the high school ag teacher to help facilitate some of the topics in that course. So the answer would be no, you do not require a master's in the content area, but you're also not the faculty of record. You would be a facilitator to help those students navigate online curriculum.
Thank you for that question, and thank you for the answer, John. All right, Rachel, you're up.
Great, thanks. Hello, my name is Rachel Ramsire. I'm the program coordinator for ACEL students on the Worcester campus. And thank you so much for allowing us to share some of our updates. We apologize that the rest of the agri-science education team, including Dr. Washburn, couldn't participate. We are in the middle of strategic planning for our department right now. So again, we send our apologies that the team couldn't be here. Our ACEL enrollment for 2020 and 2021 academic year, we had 99 agri-science education students, 1 at Marion, 1 at Newark, and 32 at Worcester, and 65 at Columbus. For community leadership students, we had 34 in total, 8 on the Worcester campus and 26 on the Columbus campus. And 92 students in agricultural communications, 17 at our Worcester campus and 75 at Columbus. Our incoming freshmen for the autumn looks promising. So agri-science education students, 3 will be starting their journey in Columbus and 16 in Worcester. For community leadership, we have 2 in Columbus and 3 who will be starting on the Worcester campus. And agricultural communication, we have 6 in Columbus and 5 starting on the Worcester campus. You're seeing some highlight here of on the slide deck. We want to extend a thank you to the agricultural educators for hosting our 2021 Agri-Science Education Student Teachers. So thank you for all of you who poured in and mentored our graduating class. 22 students completed student teaching within the past few weeks, and of those students, 9 have employment secured for the future. Many of those will be entering the classrooms. And a few will be continuing their education with graduate school, and 1 will actually be traveling to Vietnam to teach for a year. There are 19 students recently found out where they'll be teaching student teaching in the spring of 2022. So if you look at the bottom right hand picture, that's our class of 2022 student teachers, and they got their reveal using toilet paper in true pandemic fashion. They had to unroll their rolls of toilet paper to find out where their placement sites were. And that was a fun opportunity for students to gather together and to learn where there will be student teaching in 2022. Also in the top right corner, you'll see our teacher appreciation gifts. So as mentioned by several presenters, thank you to all of our agricultural educators for the hard work you've put in, especially during this year. We value what you have all done each day to provide great experiences for your students throughout the pandemic. And so on behalf of the department and CFAES, we hope you enjoy your teacher appreciation gifts. If you haven't received yours in the mail yet, we hope that you will by next Friday. And if you haven't by next Friday, please let me or someone in the department know, and we will get one to you. And then bottom left-hand corner here is our student teacher, Travis Rutledge, who was one of our graduates this year. That's him in action in our classroom. Next slide, please, Ryan. I want to quickly highlight some of our student successes. Maddie Allman, who is a community leadership student from Lauraville, Ohio, was named to the Sphinx Senior Class Honoree and Ohio State Homecoming Court. Nicole McMullen is an agri-science education student who was selected for the Ag Future of America, AFA, Student Advisory Team. She also placed first in the Minorities in Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Related Sciences, also known as Manners, interview contest, and will represent that 9-state region in the national competition this month. As you can see, we had 14 seniors and 1 graduate student who are named our ACEL Distinguished Students for 2021, and you can see their names and pictures on the top of that slide. 3 undergraduate students completed in undergraduate research projects and presented those through college and university level virtual research forums in April, and that is what you'll see on the bottom left-hand slide, an image of those students. So Shelby Beach, a senior studying agricultural communications, is pictured there. She's from Findlay, Ohio. Her project was Consumers' Perception of Ethics in Lab Cultured Proteins. Jacob Schumann is a senior studying community leadership from Chillicothe, Ohio. His project was quantifying attributes of drone congregation areas. And Mylan Pazardek, a senior studying agri-science education from Fredericktown, Ohio, was awarded 2nd place in the social science category for his project, Career Choice and Beliefs, Insights from Second-Generation Agriculture Teachers. Finally, I want to mention that we are in the process of interviewing candidates for a new position with our agri-science education faculty, and we hope that we'll have more information to share at conference next month. We are excited to be hosting summer conference on our Worcester campus, and we hope to see many of you in person this summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel, for sharing those updates and highlighting your student success and the contributions to our teachers who help mentor. So thank you, everybody, for that. Ryan, is Monty on?
Yep. Monty, just hit *6 there again and unmute, and you're good to go.
Hopefully, folks, am I on?
You're on, Monty.
Okay, that's good. I've had some, we're interviewing to replace our animal scientist. As many of you know, Harold Terry, who had taught here for 38 years, had a heart attack in January and passed away. So it's been a long semester in many ways. So first of all, we would like to thank you folks for preparing just exceptional college prepared students. It is always enjoyable when the semester starts, and we have about 80 freshmen in agriculture, which makes agriculture the largest major on campus. About 1 out of 4 students in agriculture, and without your preparation and work, they wouldn't be as successful as they are. Probably our biggest success this year is we remained face-to-face all year with about 90% of our ag classes, with the exception of Harold's, that were face-to-face. The second thing, if you do want a bilateral agreement, that's still present. The student, based on how many classes they've taken, get basically college credit for those classes up to 4. The third thing is I'm going to retire this year, folks, and I have really enjoyed the 36 years I've worked with you. We are, it's just been enjoyable. And that is basically the Wilmington update. We will be, we're interviewing for these positions. If you need any questions, please contact me at Monty_Anderson@wilmington.edu or Jenny Tower, which is Jenny_Tower@Wilmington. But again, it has been enjoyable. I'm not leaving Ohio. I'm staying here. I've got 11 grandchildren I need to get to know. So thank you.
No, thank you, Monty, for your service and partnership in agriculture education, and certainly a friend to many on this particular meeting today, especially those of us that taught in Southwest Ohio that worked with so many of your student teachers and EFE students. So thank you for all your contributions to agriculture education, and I know you've spent a lot of time serving on various boards and providing feedback throughout the last 30+ years of Ohio FFA and Ag Ed. So we definitely are very grateful for your service. With that being said, Ryan, we'll go to the next slide, and you've already got it up. And Jessica, the floor is yours to provide an update on Ohio FFA Foundation.
Hi, all. I would just add to what Matt said about Monty. I want to, publicly congratulate Monty on being inducted into the Ag Hall of Fame through the Ohio Agricultural Council. Monty served on the foundation board for many years and has been just a real pleasant leader in the industry. So thank you, Monty, for everything you've done, and congratulations. It's a very, very much deserved honor that you're receiving later this summer. From the foundation's perspective, I have a few updates for you. Obviously, we just wrapped up convention. I hope you and your students were able to tune in whatever way possible. We loved seeing so many different and inventive things on social media, how you were able to stream it in your gyms, or students watching from home, whatever your school local protocols were. We appreciate that you tried to make that experience special for your students. Our focus the entire time was on student recognition. That's why we really put our time and energy into having those live Zoom reactions. And there were a lot of sponsors that came together to help make that possible, so that we could do those things and have technology vendors behind the scenes helping coordinate everything that it took to make that happen. And those sponsors, when I reached out to them to ask for support this year, I was pretty honest that We would have their logo a few places, but we were going to focus on getting, the faces of student reactions on screen, and the sponsors were very generous and continued to support, even though we couldn't have like a trade show or things like that. So I would really appreciate if your students could send some thank you notes to our supporters. All of the contact information for CTE, Proficiency, Agri-Science Fair, National Chapter, State Degree, etc., all of those sponsors are on the Ohio FFA website. And I don't want to jinx myself, but it is one of the few buttons that was not affected in the website crash. So if you go to ohioffa.org/foundation and you click on sponsors, there is, I believe it's an orange button called 2021 Award Sponsors. Again, that's ohioffa.org/foundation/sponsors, and click on the button called 2021 Award Sponsors, and that'll take you to an Excel list of our sponsors so that your students can express their gratitude to the companies and the individuals that helped pay for that virtual experience. The archived convention sessions, if you want to show those to your chapter, those are just updated on YouTube. They'll be archived there, and eventually we'll get them linked to our website. But right now, if you want your classes that weren't able to watch it live to go back and watch it, those are there on YouTube, all 4 sessions for you. And you will soon be receiving a link to a survey in your email, and we would appreciate from the entire staff that plans convention, we would appreciate your feedback on what you liked about the virtual offering and what you'd like to see moving forward as, fingers crossed, conventions and life gets more back to normal. So please send thank you notes, and please fill out that survey when you receive that link in your email. The next thing I'll share is our community clunker cleanup program deadline was May 1st to get vehicles donated, and that winner will be announced in early June. You'll receive more info about that in the AGA newsletter. But for those of you that were hard at work collecting vehicles, you will receive the announcement in early June about which chapter has won the grand prize of $10,000. I am excited to share that we just received a renewal from the Ohio Department of Agriculture for our RCOP grant program, and that stands for our rural community outreach program that we do. We received $45,000 in funding to distribute out to chapters. So we'll give out grants in the amount of $1,000 to $5,000. We'll give out at least 12 grants. So that application info will be coming out soon. The deadline to apply is actually going to be not until June 21st this year. So you'll have through summer conference to get that filled out online. And then you'll have between August 1st and April 15th, August 1st, 2021 through April 15th, 2022 to use the money. So we're kind of extending that program out, and it used to be you really only had the fall to get the program done. Now you'll have almost a whole school year to be able to utilize those dollars. So again, look for that info soon, but the applications will be due in June. The use of those dollars, if you've never heard of the program, is really any way that your chapter wants to focus on helping bring food to local communities. So if you wanted to buy an aquaculture system, if you want to buy hydroponic lettuce towers, if you want to do food drives, if you want to build raised beds, there's many, many different programs you can work on, but the focus of that is helping bring fresh food to local communities through their FFA chapters. And my final update right now, I'm handling all of the summer conference vendor and summer conference sponsor outreach. So teachers, if you have like a curriculum company that you work with, or somebody that you think might be interested in being a vendor at summer conference, please email me their name and contact info, and I'll get out to them our packet of info about how you can be a vendor at summer conference. So my email is jparish@ohioffa.org, and if you have summer conference vendor recommendations, please send those my way. So thanks all, thanks for a great school year, and hopefully next year feels a little bit more normal than this year has.
All right, thank you, Jessica. And don't forget, as we go through the presentation today, again, if you have any questions, feel free to type those in. As we've been publishing a few of those things that we have gotten. We haven't gotten much so far. But if you do need anything, feel free to post that. And Jessica, just a real quick comment. There is one that showed up in the chat function. Is there a way to send a PDF of the sponsor list? It won't print or save a PDF, is what they're saying.
Yes, I can pull that down and have Brenda potentially link to a PDF in next week's AGA newsletter. Or if you need it right away, feel free to send me an email and I can email you a PDF attachment too.
Okay. That'll work. Thank you. All right. So it's been certainly Perkins 5. When we talk about Perkins 5, it's not new anymore, and we're kind of beyond the transition stage at that point. So we thought that really to kind of touch on the 3 key components, and ironically enough, these are 2 of these 3 things were things that that Leah had discussed in her director's update, of course, which are really focused towards our national Perkins plan through our state plan, and that would be number 1, a quick a review, I guess, of concentrator definition, as that's going to affect all of you. I'm sure all of you get called upon by your EMIS professionals on identifying or providing some identification or assistance in identifying those concentrators from a reporting standpoint. And then also we're going to talk a little bit more extensively about work-based learning with a few more resource slides than what we've provided in the past, because as we continue to move forward through the quality program review, again, you're going to see that number as a 3rd threshold that Ryan will get into here later today. So we're going to touch base on those 2 things, and then also Alyssa is going to provide us an update with some of the work that we've got around the topic of equity. So Ryan, if you would go to the next slide. Again, this is a real quick reminder that we do not use the word completer. I know that there are some folks out there that maybe use that outdated word, but what we are tracking in CTE are 2 things. One of which is a participant. A participant is an individual who completes not less than 1 course in a CTE program or program of study. A concentrator is the individual who has completed at least 2 courses in a single career and technical education program of study. Of course, this was a change from Perkins 4, as well. What we were used to doing, of course, was basically 3 courses and 3 web exams or end of course assessments. And through Perkins 5, again, a general reminder, and this isn't new, that has shifted to a 2 course concentrator definition. Ryan, go on to the next slide. Now, I say we don't use the word completer because we don't, but through Perkins 5, we did as a state identify the definition for what completion means. So what does it mean to complete 2 courses? And for a student to have completed 2 courses, it is defined in Ohio through the Data and Accountability External Work Group that the student would complete at least 90% of the scheduled hours for the course. So basically they sat for 90% of the seat time that's available for the course, or, so it is an and/or earned full or partial credit. And the course must be for a state-approved CTE, a workforce development course. So if you had a student sit for AF&R and then you had a student sit for animal and plant science, that student would be a concentrator and would be reported the year in which they were enrolled as in the CTE course from that standpoint. I think oftentimes too, this definition of completion is a really good rule of thumb for us when we think about who to assess. I know this is the time of year when we get a lot of questions, me in particular, about web exam and assessment and who should I be assessing. I have students that maybe were not with me the entire time, or maybe they were with me for a period of time. And I guess the answer to that question that I typically refer to is that if a student has sat for 90% of the course and or they have earned partial credit, So maybe your district gave them local credit for completing a semester. If that's partial credit, there should be an assessment for that student, because if that partial credit becomes their second course, that student is going to be a concentrator, and there would be an assessment score that would be aligned to that particular student. Ryan, let's go on to the next one. The next one is work-based learning. Again, this isn't a new slide. This is an actual definition. I'm not going to read it to you, but this is the exact definition that's provided through the federal law around Perkins defining work-based learning. And as we read it, certainly I think you can pull out some key components such as workplace, simulated environments, educational institution, those curriculum and instruction and that alignment. Those are things that really, I think when we look at how we can serve students through our supervised ag experience programs, could potentially provide some direct alignment through that particular definition. And Ryan, if you would go on to the next slide. And as we take a look at work-based learning, again, this slide here particularly isn't necessarily new either. The data and accountability work group that I mentioned earlier really spent a lot of time talking about and discussing this work-based learning component from that standpoint as a performance-based measure for our state. And we do know that work-based learning is not just CTE. It is a pathway for graduation for students in CTE or outside of CTE. And it's been identified as a very important a piece of not only career technical education, but education and preparing students for life after high school. There are 6 types of work-based learning experiences. Again, as we scroll through those, and those of you that have taken the chance to look at those, they align very closely, almost in some cases identically, to what we would recognize through supervised agricultural experiences. For work-based learning in CTE, their work-based learning in CTE should be aligned to the career pathway in which the student is enrolled or taking a course in at the particular time. Or if that student's not in CTE, can also be aligned to the graduation plan or the student success plan. Work-based learning agreements, work-based learning must have learning agreements assigned to it. And as we go through that and talk more about learning agreements here, hopefully you can see some direct correlation with what we have currently available through AET for supervised ag experience. The other thing we've got is that with the alignment of CTE at 250 hours of kind of being the threshold from that standpoint of what we're looking for a percentage of your CTE concentrators, and might I add a small percentage of your CTE concentrators. But that 250 hours comes because of the alignment that we see with the pathway to graduation. As students progress through their high school experience, they can accumulate those hours across multiple types. So again, just as we have with SAE, you have students that can earn hours through entrepreneurship, through placement, and they may have even started out as working in the school-based enterprise that you have at your at your CTC or your school. So those things are available for those hours to accumulate as a student progresses over time, and can also mix types and kinds from that standpoint as well. And Ryan, if we would, let's go to the next slide and we'll take a look at those 6 different types. And I think for those of us that are, ag instructors, when we look at this, you can really kind of break this down almost into 4 types. The 3 boxes on top are more or less what we would identify as either paid or unpaid placement. May look a little different. The first one is our traditional job site placement. Second one would be an apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship program, which at this point we don't have very many of those types of programs in agriculture, but that certainly is recognized. And then also the virtual remote placement. I think we all get that. This is where students are employed and they have an employer, and again, it could be a paid or non-paid experience. The three that we're going to probably spend a little more time focusing on are entrepreneurship, school-based enterprise, and simulated work environment. And I think those are great opportunities. Those are things that we also do in the ag ed world through SAE, and certainly ways that we can, beside a traditional job placement, keep those students in agriculture engaged in work-based learning experiences and opportunities. To be a work-based learning experience, there's really guiding principles that are established with the Ohio Department of Education. So I guess my rule of thumb is not every SAE is a work-based learning experience, but every SAE could be a work-based learning experience if you pay attention to these guiding principles and make sure that they're implemented in the program. Work-based learning experiences must occur at a work-based learning site. That work-based learning site can exist virtually, as we mentioned, but we also know it can exist in, at times, utilizing your lab, your school greenhouse, your school farm. It can be taking place on the school site. Also, all work-based learning sites should include regular interaction with clients, customers, or community members. I think that interaction of the external customer or consumer, from that standpoint, if it's an entrepreneurship, is important for it to classify as a work-based learning experience. The next slide, work-based learning experiences should be co-supervised, and we know that specifically looking at our entrepreneur or our placement experiences, where we, the teacher, are kind of a co-supervisor to some extent, as that we may go out and visit the student at the place of employment, but we know that their direct supervisor of that particular student with that experience is the person that is running the business. It's the employer. We know that through an entrepreneurship, a school-based enterprise, or a simulated work environment, sometimes a teacher may be kind of like the lead supervisor. So we certainly think that there needs to be a co-person, just as the teacher's involved with the placement SAE. There needs to be someone involved with those other three types, and that person would be a business and industry mentor from that standpoint, and that person can work with the teacher to help co-supervise. When we do use the word co-supervised, it doesn't mean necessarily that they have to be there present every day. Just like the teacher co-supervises the placement, you may show up at the job placement site a few times and provide an overall evaluation with the supervisor. That can kind of reciprocate also to an entrepreneurship with your industry mentor and you, the teacher. Next slide, Ryan. For work-based learning, there are some requirements that are set by the Department of Education in setting up a learning agreement, and these are the 5 things that need to be addressed. I'm not going to read them to you, but they can be found on our website. They will also be included in this slide deck. And again, this presentation is being recorded, so you can go back and review this if you would like. When you take a quick look at these, you are going to see that these work-based learning agreements do align very closely to things that we do have provided in AET. So Ryan, if you go to the next slide. One more, Ryan. There we go. So this is an example of a work-based learning agreement for an entrepreneurship. This is a SAE consisting of 2 market lambs. This is just an example, but I think one that checks all the boxes when we take a look at what is actually required in a learning agreement. You can see here a good description that includes several things, such as the start and close of the project, some project goals, identify who's assisting, including a business mentor, as you can see identified there at number 4. And then you can also see some safety practices listed. You can also see a outline of the time investment, kind of paints the picture for the student learning experience that's going to occur through the work-based learning experience. And the next slide, you will see again, that financial component that we're so well noted for in our supervised ag experience is being listed there as well. This would also include a completed budget and would conclude with the signatures from the appropriate parties that you can see here. Student, parent, guardian, ag teacher. The one thing that is missing from this sign piece that was, again, necessary for your entrepreneurship programs to count as work-based learning when you report that to your EMIS professional is that external business or industry mentor that you have identified. And that could be someone that may be, in this case, a livestock producer that's in your community that is maybe providing some mentorship for this particular student from that standpoint. Again, I think the main emphasis there on the bottom is, as we talk more about reporting work-based learning and SAE for work-based learning, and also applying those entrepreneurship components to credentials as well. The importance of journaling hours is again, it's more important than just for job placement. We're so used to doing that for paid and unpaid placement, but it's important to teach our students to journal those hours because they can use those. We can report those for work-based learning through entrepreneurship when all of those components are met. And we can also do the same for school-based enterprise and simulated work environment.
So as Matt was discussing, reporting this is a question we receive a lot from our teachers across the state and even from as professionals within our comprehensive districts that don't have a lot of experience with reporting career technical education. And so we want to show you this document here that's posted to the work-based learning page on the department's website that outlines the 3 big reporting windows that your EMIS coordinators are going to be asking for information. And so when you look at this, there's a couple different places that the information gets reported. And each one, it gets reported a little bit differently. And so we want to talk about where it hits for accountability and where it hits for kind of the target setting mechanism that the department uses to evaluate our implementation of Perkins. So in the first part here, the career technical program codes, we are asking you to identify what type of work-based learning experience it was. And so was it an internship, an apprenticeship, or one of those other 4 types of work-based learning? And so that gets 1 reporting. So when you break this down for your EMIS coordinator, or they ask you for the information, it's good to know that I'm going to need to separate it out based on the 4 types, the internships and the apprenticeships. Again, for the most part, our programs are going to rely on those other work-based learning most often, but we may have some students that are in those internship completions where they have maybe an unpaid experience that they're working through. So that can get collected at the end of each school year in the student collection or in the grad collection. So again, this is something that gets reported each year on your students. And more importantly, we want to ensure that it's definitely getting reported on any student who meets that concentrator definition from earlier that Matt went through. So that's one area that we're going to look to report. The next one is we're going to determine of those hours that we just kind of separated into those 3 buckets, what band of hours did it fall in? And so you see here that we're just asking you to identify, was it 0, less or more than 0, but less than 40, 40 to 99, and so on, up to even 500 plus hours. The band here that is most important is those concentrator students that we've identified. We want to get as many of them as we can to that 250 mark. The other bands still are giving your district credit towards the Career Technical Planning District report card, but that 250 is really that benchmark that we're looking to hit. Again, this is getting collected during that student collection or grad collection. This should take place at the end of the school year each year. And so based on those concentrators, these are the hours that you really want to report. And you want to report every year, because what we want to be able to do is see that progression for the students, but the time that in which the hours are starting to count towards a quality program review measure is at the point the student graduates and leaves school. So the grad collection from a student leaving school is super important for them when they're a concentrator and they've hit that 250 hours or more. The last piece here, I know a few folks reached out to us here in March and asked, hey, my EMIS coordinator is asking me for a number of work-based learning hours. This is our informational and informal collection. And so what we're asking here is, in that follow-up survey, we're trying to identify the number of hours that students had in work-based learning experiences that related to their program of concentration. And so in this March D, that same student that you reported that band of hours on after they graduated or when they graduated, that following March update, that 6 months later, that post-program placement follow-up, we actually want to know the total number of hours that the student had that related to their supervised agriculture experience or their work-based learning experience. And so that gets reported in D. Right now, that does not have an accountability control to it, but what it does do is it's helping us indicate which pathways we have in the state are getting to that number and have robust experiences, and which ones we need to look at developing resources and programming around to help foster those opportunities. And so, again, this is a lot to take in, but I would encourage you to review this information with your EMIS coordinator and start to look at how you are going to collect this information and be able to support the teacher or support the EMIS coordinator and completing that information accurately and to the best of both of your abilities. The next slide here is just some tips that we would like you to share. We have an overview document of work-based learning that's published to the work-based learning page on the department's website. It's going to give you the references to the EMIS manual. It's going to tell you that there's no minimum hours required to report the career tech program codes, and so we want you to get into the habit of just reporting them every year. Again, it's just going to become that best practice for us. It does outline if work-based learning is being used for a grad requirement and how those things are going to work together. I think some of you are going to start to hear more from your principals or school counselors about, hey, we hear there's this work-based learning component to graduation. How does that fit into your program? And I think you all are very well situated to say, hey, we're good record keepers. We have great SAE experiences that become great work-based learning experiences or are work-based learning experiences. And so you can really, again, help a student meet that through the quality program that you're providing. It's imperative that every element gets reported by your EMIS coordinator. And we know that this is going to be a growing pain and growing process for some districts. And so we want you to reach out to us as you have questions, as you have those conversations, and lean on us to help where we can and point you in the right direction with the resources. We do have a dedicated staff member in our office that takes in a lot of our questions, and she works with a committee of program specialists like Alyssa and I, but her name is Brenna Bartlett, and she will be able to assist if you have questions. But again, if you feel more comfortable reaching out to us, you may do so as well, and we'll loop Brenna into the conversation. And Matt, there's a couple questions there. Do we want to hit those now, or do we want to keep moving? I'm going to go ahead and answer two questions that came in, so that because they're on this topic. The first one is, do we report the amount of hours for each concentrator each year or just the ones graduating? So when we're talking about the fine number, the detailed number of hours for each student, that'll be in the March D, which will be 6 months after they leave school. Students each year will get reported with that band of hours. So you'll tell them that it was, okay, Tommy was 0 to 40, Jenny was 99 to the next band, and so on. So every student will get reported at the end of the year for that band, and then also for that code of what type of hours were accumulated. The other question that came in, Matt mentioned a percentage of concentrators that would be asked to have 250. Do we know what that percentage is? We're going to hit on that in, I think, just a couple slides, but that's in reference to quality program review. So we'll hit that here momentarily. I'm going to turn it over to Alyssa to give us how Perkins and equity work is happening around the state. Alyssa?
Thanks, Ryan. So earlier this spring, our office held 4 regional equity labs, and we focused on teachers and administrators this year, which was a little bit different than what we did last year. The teachers, for those equity labs, we focused on how to identify equity gaps within the classroom and how some tips and strategies to overcome those equity gaps. And then the administrators, we focused on a little bit more of the data side, and we gave them some tips and tricks and some tools to provide as they're closing those equity gaps that was identified in the comprehensive local needs assessment. Like Leah said at the beginning, there is the equity grant that is available to address some of those equity gaps identified. So you can talk to your administration if you feel like that is something that is needed. Also, Leah touched on the Equity Ambassador Program, so definitely feel free to reach out to your Equity Ambassador through your CTPD to help you with those equity questions and to get some tips and tricks for that. Also, our office is working with the American Institute for Research instead of NAEP for this year for the work that we're doing around equity. AIR, in collaboration with our office, will be providing a virtual professional development opportunity for the equity ambassadors and develop a data story for the state of Ohio that will be available for districts to use in the equity labs during the 2022 school year. So we're excited about those initiatives and excited to work with AIR this year. So you want to go to the next slide, Ryan. Also, the credential updates, similar to what Ryan was talking about with the work-based learning, we do have 2 identified program staff within our office to help with industry credentials. But of course, you can still reach out to Ryan, Tracy, and myself with questions regarding credentials. Several of you know Patty Gooseman. She's one of the identified personnel that works with credentials. You can also reach out to Emma Waymeyer. She's also a great resource to reach out with questions. Also, don't forget about the industry credential vendor flexibility information and guidance that is posted to our website for flexibility regarding credentials during the COVID-19. I think I'm turning it back over to Ryan.
Thanks, Alyssa, for that update. And so, as I mentioned, we were going to jump over to kind of that question of where that number comes from, or that percentage that Matt alluded to, and that is looking at our data measures for Perkins V and for the quality program review going forward. And so, you know, technical skill is something that we've all continued to work towards, and this is that summative pathway assessment for our students that are concentrators. Typically had been based off of 3 assessments. Perkins V, we've narrowed that down to 2 assessments, so that summative score is based off a minimum of 2, but can be based off of the total number of classes that a student was that a student completed and or earned credit or sat for 90% of the seat time. So that completion definition again. Our benchmark for FY22 is 69% passage rate of our concentrators having a proficient score or advanced score on the assessment, summative assessments for web exam. Post-program placement is now going to move to the middle, and it becomes the second indicator now. You'll notice that what used to be here was participation. Participation gets rolled into the tech skill now as part of that calculation. So participation still is being counted. So ensure that you're assessing every student that's enrolled in your course that's going to meet that completion of the course definition. But we now have moved it out of kind of the three measures we show, and post-program placement moves over. 70%, nothing has substantially changed with how we perform with this. So continue to do the follow-up survey 6 months after your students leave school. Continue to tell us where you've found that they've landed. And that could be post-secondary education, training programs, military, have joined the workforce. And now we've added that a federally supported under Title I of the National Community Service Act of 1990, some volunteer programs that are acceptable as well. So review those, but not a whole lot substantial change there. And then work-based learning is our third measure now that we use, and this is the key indicator that we actually report to the federal government for the entire state. And so really important here to note that we're looking at 14% of concentrators who left school in that cohort is who has that work-based learning hours. So this is going to be based off of the grad cohort for a particular year. And so if you have 10 students that are concentrators, you're looking for 1.4 students to have completed a work-based learning experience of more than 250 hours. So in this case, you'd need 2 out of those 10 to be able to hit that benchmark. There was a couple questions that came in after I was answering some, so I just wanted to jump to those. And so one of the questions was, is that band that we talked about previously just for a single year, or is it a rolling number? It's a rolling number. So this is a cumulative process, 9th through 12th grade. Upon the student exiting, have they hit that 250? So even after their freshman year, if they have 30 hours and they've taken 2 courses and they're concentrators, then you would report that 0 to 30 band. Seniors, you're going to report them with their new total. So each year it's going to be that new total. And the other one that we had, does EMIS accumulate the hours? EMIS rolls the hour band forward. So you always get credit for the last reported band reported, but there is no accumulation mechanism in there because we don't ask you for the actual number of hours until they've left school, and that's related to their program of study. So that would be a no on the accumulation side. Quality program review. So as many of you have probably heard already or are curious about, for November 2021, which would be the FY21 report card for career technical education, we are hold harmless for the consequences to students and programs. However, that means you're held harmless from the negative ramifications in the compliance cycle. However, we have made the determination that if you have come out of non-compliance in one of these years of 2020 or 2021, you actually reset your clock in that 5-year compliance cycle. So we're providing that ability to use the positive if your district or school or program has moved to compliance, but we're giving you some breathing room if you've been non-compliant for a few years, or maybe this is the first year you're non-compliant, that you will maintain your compliance status of FY19 pre-pandemic and pre-Perkins implementation. So really in this, what we would love to see happen is that districts still continue to work through their quality program review using the quality program standards tool. We highly encourage you to be using that with your advisory councils and advisories, using that with your administrators, and then as a teacher yourself, using it to determine where you're at holistically against that set of standards that really looks at all aspects of your program. Matt, you're up for web exams.
Thanks, Ryan. And when you asked me that question earlier, I was trying to talk, but I just had the mute bug, so I'm sorry about that. All right, well, I'll go ahead and give an update on web exam, and hopefully you've had an opportunity to kind of follow some of the things. There's been some really cool policy and I guess procedures or business rules that have been made available to provide some flexibility to districts, both through last year and then also again extending for some cases through this spring too. So the first one I want to talk about is in relation to House Bill 67. I believe I would have mentioned this during our delegate council meeting with OAAE when I provided an update there. The Department of Higher Education and the Department of Education basically provided guidance in response to House Bill 67 to provide students an opportunity to earn those college credit for courses, of course, it has CTAG credit aligned to it. So it was necessary for us to provide students, I think, every opportunity that we can. It's very similar to what we did last year, although last year when we reported grades for students for CTAGs and actually for all of CTE, it was for all students. This year it's a provision for only juniors and seniors. So please keep that in mind as we talk about this. This is on the Ohio Department of Education's assessment page, as well as some other information as well. But again, this is very similar to what we would have done last year, but it's for juniors and seniors only. And before we go to the next slide, really just want to, I guess, highlight some of Leah's comments that she made in the beginning. We know that, in the last 14 or 15 months, with instructional delivery being different than normal, and with the challenges, we know that there definitely are learning gaps out there. So the value of assessment isn't for a compliance piece, so to speak. Obviously, technical skill attainment is important to us and our business and industry partners, but it's also a very useful tool for us to identify good teaching and to improve teaching strategies to help narrow those gaps in our students. So even though that you can report a grade instead of an assessment score for your juniors and seniors, we are strongly recommending to test those students so that you position yourself as an educator to do what's best for students in your summer preparation as you prepare for next year. And that way you can identify what students may need some remediation and those type of things too. So don't forget about the value of the assessment from an instructional tool. And from what we've seen, all districts have been testing at a very good rate, very similar to what we would have seen with the 2019 numbers from that standpoint. So thank you. This also in this guidance talks about and uses the word advantageous for the student. We know that in some cases you could be doing a disservice to the student by reporting a grade and not testing them. In some cases, a student may actually earn a D or an F in your course, but may pass the web exam. And if that's the case, if you did not provide them the assessment, they may not have the opportunity to earn college credit, even though they could have passed that test. So in most cases, I think it's good guidance for us to test all students and report both the grade and the test. And if that test is not available for whatever reason, if a parent refuses to have a student take a test or sit for an assessment, you can report the grade for those juniors and seniors from that standpoint. Ryan, next slide. Again, this is really, I went into that again for juniors and seniors, very similar to what we did last year. Again, this will provide access, or access here is provided to the CTE assessment page. There's a FAQ that's posted under there under resources that takes the common questions that we would have answered in 20 and 21 around the alternative with the grade reporting. And there's some good information on there if you or your districts have questions on that specifically. There's also a web exam resources that have been provided both on their website. They've also provided a resource video that'll be posted as well in the next week or so on that assessment page to kind of provide a tutorial for those of you that may need a reminder on what to do for that. I'm very happy to announce we do have retaking policy, and this is not just a COVID related policy. This is from now on going forward. We've heard a lot of our teachers and administrators really wanting the opportunity to retest, especially those seniors. Web exam tests now may be retaken by graduating seniors, or let's just say the word graduating students. From that standpoint, because if you had a junior or a senior, someone that was maybe graduating early and they've met the qualifications for graduation, that assessment policy would be doable for them as well. They may retake those web exam tests. The only thing is you must schedule 30 days, in between, and provide 30 days in between from a remediation standpoint. And then also from a test security standpoint as well. Please note that because of the timing on the reporting and the work on the psychometrics and everything else that's involved with determining the cut scores and the questions and those type of things, and the assessment validation piece through field testing, that field tests are not at this time being retaken. Due to just the length of the test and the closing of the field test window. So really any web exam assessment can be retaken by a senior as long as there's 30 days in between and it's not a course that's in field testing, which right now we have no ag courses that are in field testing. Another web exam update, rosters can be uploaded anytime throughout the end of the school year. So this has kind of been an extension given to districts from that standpoint. Again, all of this information can also be found on the CTE assessment page. The post-testing window has been extended by, I believe, almost 2 full weeks there to June 11th of 2021. And the end of the year reporting has been moved to June the 18th. The course grade upload window for the 2020-2021 grades for juniors and seniors of what I just discussed, for those of you that are entering grades for juniors and seniors, is now open. It opened on May 3rd, and you will have until June the 11th to submit those grades to web exam.
Thanks, Matt, for that update on web exam. And we did have a couple questions come in on web exam, Matt, and just go ahead and read those to you. So what if a senior has already taken a web exam and not passed it, but has a C or better in the class?
Well, if the student has taken a web exam and has not passed it, if there is 30 days, you could always reassess that student if you see appropriate. But House Bill 67 does provide you the opportunity to enter a grade as well as that assessment score for the student. So that way you would get the technical skill credit from that standpoint for that student. And if it was a CTAG related course, they would have the opportunity to earn the college credit.
Thanks, Matt. Fifth quarter opened up on Monday, and CCIP. I know some districts provide our teachers with access to the CCIP platform through the OHID portal login. And so if you're a teacher that has that access, you should be able to get into the application. New this year with the application, the planning tool and funding tool that had typically been completed prior to filling out the application are now been removed, separated from the application itself, because the Department of Education is moving to a system called One Plan. And so for this year, we've removed those validations for the planning tool. And so the application itself is the only component that will need to be completed with the budget and the narratives that are within the application. So that is open. It will close June 30, 2021, a little bit later than what we've done in the past. And that is to align better with all of the other applications coming in from your districts for different state level grants. It's also to ensure the legislature has acted upon the line item for fifth quarter funding that is currently present in the House version of the biennium budget. And so that line item is $600,000 currently, and we're watching that to see that it stays there through the Senate and through the Joint Committee review process. If you've never been on fifth quarter or would like to know about fifth quarter a bit more, it's a couple very quick things to note. You do need to have completed the Quality Program Standard Review tool for the current year. You must be a subscriber of AET, and students and teachers must record their AET records in AET, and then teachers that are on the grant must record SAE visits and SAE management hours in AET. The grant is only to fund teacher salaries and salary fringe benefits related directly to SAE visits and SAE management outside of the school day. We will host a webinar for applicants May 20th, 2021. It'll be a virtual webinar. You'll see it in the AGA newsletter coming up for that link. So please, if you plan to apply for the grant or are on the grant currently, please plan to attend that. And for those of you on the current year grant for fiscal year 2021, you will receive in the first week of June the follow-up summary report that we've completed in the past. So ensure that you are maintaining your AET records, make sure your students are up to date so that we get an accurate reflection that we can forward on to our legislative staff to continue to make sure that the legislature knows the great work that you all are doing across the state with this funding. So any questions on that, please feel free to reach out to me directly. But we look forward to another successful year of fifth quarter.
Ryan, it looks like we do have someone that's excited for the webinar for fifth quarter, but they are curious roughly how long will it last?
Well, it will be about an hour, but as Matt Winkle will tell you, Ryan Curtis says an hour. It'll probably be an hour and 15. But we hope to be able to brief everybody on how to access CCIP, show them where the application is, the questions they need to answer, and then talk about the follow-up form that'll need to be completed at the end of that process. So about an hour, and it is scheduled for 3:30 to 4:30 on the calendar. All right, summer conference, and thanks to Sabrina for being on earlier from OAAE. Joey and Pfeiffer and myself, along with your district chairs and your pathway chairs of OAAE, have been working really hard since late December, early December, I guess would be more accurate, to identify sessions, topics, and presenters. And we are excited to announce that we have over 40 unique sessions this year to offer that vary from tours to workshops, technical sessions led by college faculty at Worcester, Wilmington College, and Central State University, programming sessions from some of our partners across the agricultural industry, and then by popular demand, we've increased the number of teacher-led sessions. And so a few years ago, those were tried out and they were really popular with everybody. And so we were able to add a few more this year, and we're excited about that. We did run into a hiccup this week. We were supposed to go live yesterday with registration, but as the website incurred some interference, we're working to get it restored, which will allow us to restore the summer conference registration. However, Brenda, being as awesome as she is, she went ahead and sent out to you all a PDF of the sessions and agenda with descriptions and presenters. So those of you that are on today that are presenters, thank you for answering the call from your OAAE counterparts and come out and providing some great sessions. But also for those of you curious and want to know which ones you want to attend, please review that document and be ready to register. Also, please review the hotel registration information that's been in the Ag Ed newsletter a couple of times. That rooming blocks do start to close here towards the end of the month. So we want to make sure that you have plenty of time to get those registrations in. If you have any questions, please reach out to us or Joanne, and we will answer those about summer conference. Matt, give us an update on state leadership nights.
Well, before I do that, Ryan, I've got some great news. I just got a text from Brenda Carell and said that we are good, that registration for summer conference is now open. So teachers are able to do that now if they would like.
Awesome. Great news. Thanks, Matt.
Yep. All right. And really quick, some housekeeping items. Obviously, we've come to the close of closing on the school year, of course, with the conclusion of state convention, and you all are wrapping up your years as you're preparing for banquets and end of the school year and graduation and those type of things. Just a couple of things to keep in mind as we look to 21 and 22. Kind of as Leah alluded, we've got been having conversations about what programming is going to look like for next year. And as we continue to have those, it's also going to be important for us to continue to get data and to get also information from you that we typically would get. So as we begin planning for leadership nights in the fall, just as we had previously done in the last 2 years, we would need the districts to nominate 2 host sites and 1 alternate host site and turn those into Katie by August the 1st. I do plan on having a district chairs meeting this summer where we will talk about a number of items, and if that does occur around or on this time, you can always welcome to kind of bring that information with you, or you can send it directly to Katie. But be thinking about that and how we've kind of moved that leadership night platform to nominating programs within your districts. Next slide, Ryan. I know that we've got a lot of new teachers, and I think sometimes maybe I included maybe take for granted that reminding folks of the policy that we have established in September of 2014 about how we provide, how we get feedback from our teachers from that standpoint on programming. And know that we've had a lot of folks from the field reach out this year to provide us some pats on the back and say thank you, nice job, and also some general items for improvement from that standpoint. And remember that whether it's a COVID year or non-COVID year, there's been a process set forth in policy for everyone to have a voice. And again, this guy, I really like this. This is in the CTE advisory sheet, I believe, that's on the website, and kind of shows you like the function of how all of us tie together from the department standpoint and how we have direct influence with what's taught in the classroom and the other 2 circles as well. but then also the branch from the third circle, which is FFA, to the Ohio FFA Board of Trustees, our governing board of directors. Those members and the list of those members can be seen and found on the Ohio FFA website. Of course, teacher representation is on that board. And speaking of which, I will need districts 5 and 9 to identify a nominee from each of those 2 districts to fill a position from Nathan Berkheimer, who will be coming off of the Board of Trustees in 2021. So districts 5 and 9 will need to send me directly a nomination from your district, and if that would come from the district chair from those 2 districts, that would be great. But that FFA Board of Trustees is made up of 5 teachers, but also our post-secondary partners, as well as business and industry. So the advisory groups that are Ohio FFA Advisory, which basically are our leadership programming events, anything from like leadership nights to state convention, Ohio FFA evaluation, you know, those type of things that are non-competitive event related in terms of CTEs, those would go to the FFA Advisory. The FFA Advisory policy requires us to meet at least once a year, and sometimes we do meet more than that. There is a Board of Trustees liaison that is appointed that serves not only as a board member, but also attends those meetings to communicate information that's shared from the other teachers at the FFA Advisory meeting to the board if a recommendation has been made from advisory. And the CTE Advisory is set up the exact same way. All 10 districts are represented on both advisory committees. You identify those folks, they have the opportunity to attend the meetings, but they also have the opportunity to bring agenda items, and they are encouraged to do that, and that's something that has always been available for your district. So as you do have items to bring up to advisory committee meetings, make sure that you discuss those in your spring meetings and that they have the consent of the district to move forward. And then as we go through our advisory meetings and get input from some of our program delivery models, then there's always a place in the agenda for each of the 10 districts to bring those items up, and we can discuss those all as an entire advisory group. Please keep in mind that the 2 advisory groups that you see here listed are not a policy or governance driven. That is the Ohio FFA Board of Trustees that are, and that's why we do have those trustees that are appointed and serve as the liaisons to those 2 specific advisory committees. So I just wanted to provide that general reminder about that infrastructure that we have available to receive feedback from teachers, and of course you don't have to. We take feedback anytime, but I mean from an actionable feedback where you would maybe see improvement in policy or program delivery, that's the best way to bring things up. Of course, you're always able and I mean, I'm always interested in taking emails or phone calls from teachers, and we can set up meetings to discuss anything that you may have as well. But that is the platform that's provided from that standpoint. Some important dates, speaking of advisory, Ryan, go to the next slide. You will see that the Ohio FFA Advisory meeting is set for September the 23rd. Again, I do sit in on OAAE meetings as well as have a district chairs meeting, and there's several opportunities for me to, of course, to listen to the concerns of our educators and feedback or suggestions. So, but our next scheduled one as of right now is September the 23rd. The Ohio FFA CTE Advisory Committee meeting is meeting May the 18th. Those of you that have already had district meetings, this date's been on the calendar for a while, so hopefully you've had an opportunity to discuss and provide updates from previous meetings to your district, and hopefully you're coming to that meeting with any suggestions or questions that your district may have for the CTE advisory group as a whole. Also, we have the Proficiency Agri-Science Fair and National Chapter Award critiques. We continue to have a very strong presence, obviously, at the national level, and I think a lot of that is built in to the way that we help each other as an educational community to help get our students recognized. So Again, there will be a national chapter award critique. This one will be virtual again, like it was last year on May 20th at 4:30. There's also going to be an agri-science fair critique that's going to be May the 26th. That will be virtual. The proficiency award critique will be held in person at the Ohio FFA Center. It's going to be the first event we've hosted at the FFA Center for some time. So we look forward to being hospitable and hosting teachers for that particular event. And I know that Brenda and Tracy will be sending out more specific instructions on what that's going to look like in the very near future. But please keep those critique dates on your calendar for those of you that are going to be having applications that will be sent on to the next level. And Ryan, I think that really concludes my updates from that standpoint. I know it's been a very long meeting from that standpoint, but definitely appreciate everyone that's been on the call today, and definitely we're able to answer questions. So those of you that may have questions, if you have not had a chance to type those in yet and you would like to do that, you may do so at this time if you haven't already.
So Matt, we've got a few here in the queue, and I guess we can kind of just go through those as others may come in here. But a lot of these are kind of going back to the concentrator definitions and situations to update people on. So one of the questions that came in says, so the definition of concentrator is that the student has completed 2 courses. If a student leaves after their sophomore year and completes 2 courses in a different pathway at a career center, do we still report on that student after they graduate? Are they still a concentrator for us?
Ryan, feel free to take that one.
No problem. So this is probably a relief to some of you, but once that student becomes a concentrator in another program area at a different provider, so they move to the Career Center, they will no longer be your student of record for program of concentration. So a student will only have one program of concentration, and that program of concentration where they last were enrolled with the greatest amount of seat time is where their program of concentration and their quality program review data will be generated. So for those sophomores that move on from your program and do not return and complete their program of concentration at the Career Center, you will not be required to do follow-up surveys or report those work-based learning hours for students. We had another question very similar to that. If a student finishes 2 courses in our program, then moves, again, same response. And I think we even had a third one here of that. So I will add the caveat, if a student would return from you after their junior year and resume taking classes their senior year with you, they would probably end up with enough seat time, and you being their last provider, be back on your roster. So please be mindful of that, as students do tend to move back and forth between districts and providers. Matt, looked like another question in here. What is a student is in ag for 4 years at high school and also a student at Career Center for 2 years concurrently? Great question. So again, using that same tiebreaker, it'll be the program where they last were a concentrator and have the greatest amount of seat time. Most often, now this is not every case, this is case by case, but most often, students at a Career Center will accumulate more clock hours within a program of concentration due to the length of period. So most of your periods are 48 minutes over 4 years, and a double block period over 2 years at a Career Center is going to accumulate more hours. So in that case, it's come down to the total clock hours where the student last provided service, And if there's a tie for last provided service, it's where they had the most hours. I think we just answered that one. Summer conference question. Summer conference registration just says normally actions to save your stuff would have run, but this is demo. We just have fake delay and model at the end. Is it working? We will check in with Brenda and try to get something out to everybody. We'll check in on that. Not sure what that all means. There were two questions in here. One that I don't have an answer to, so I'm going to go ahead and publish it though. It says summer hours go to what school year? Matt, has the work-based learning group talked through summer instruction? I know Brenna Bartlett and I today talked about it, but I'm not sure what the answer is on this one.
Well, I guess I would probably lean toward like how those work-based learning hours are being recorded in the CTE program, and meaning that it's probably going to be more of a local decision on how you implement that. The most important thing is that the total hours that's reported for the student needs to be, documented and aligned to what's what's been recorded, and in case for any reason that data may be audited or checked or those type of things, that if you do report 325 hours for a student over their time in your CTE program, that that's the hours that you have recorded. So we do know that that can be everybody has a little bit different local record keeping system. For some folks, they may do from August to July, and they may do from September to the end of August, or for some of us, we always did January 1. You might do August to the end of December 31st for those ninth graders that enter your program, and then officially start then a full 12-month calendar year from a record keeping standpoint on January 1 and run through December. So I believe there should be some local, to some degree, local flexibility there, Ryan, as long as the hours that are reported are justified and recorded properly.
Yeah, and thinking through that, Matt, as you were talking, the reporting window it starts for the student collection, it starts in February and runs until August. And the grad reporting, it opens in late May or mid-May and runs through September. So your district does have time to report those hours collected over the summer after that student has graduated. And so you'll have to make that determination, I guess, locally. So nope, that makes sense. The next one here, do we have to submit a log for each student's hours each year? A log would be a no, but you do need to report each year the band of hours and the type of work-based learning experience. If it's the one of the four that are under the other category, internship or apprenticeship. So that will be something you want to do each year. And again, that record gets updated each year the student is enrolled in career technical education. Let's see, web exam. A sophomore who changes out of ag at semester received a semester grade and completed ag their freshman year. So they need to take web exam now. Is that correct? And they are a concentrator or not? So some nuances to this question are, did the student receive partial credit for the second course? If at any point they meet the definition of completing a course, which would be that or partial credit and or 90% of the seat time, then it is best practice to have that student assess for that course, because they are going to show up in the accountability system as a concentrator. And so we want to make sure that the student has that opportunity to do so. Somebody kind of asked a question here in response to one of our answers, says, Okay about a student at a career center, but the EMIS folks said that web exam moved the student back to the home district. You still should have access to your student data set, but with that particular situation, it sounds like to me there may be more going on than what's there. So with that, if you're still on, who asked that specific question about the EMIS lady emailing me back and web exam moving students, reach out to me, send me an email tonight, and we'll try to circle back with you tomorrow. Matt, if a student receives a D or F last year, do they need to go back and try to pass last year's web exam?
That's a good question, and I would give them the opportunity to do so. I think that would be a best practice.
Question here. What is the status on more college and university accepted CTAGs for our courses? Where can we find the current list? That's great. Great question. And so the compliance list for post-secondaries continues to be updated. And Matt, I'm going to make a note here to run a newsletter article in the AGA newsletter about CTAGs and some resources regarding talking to your students about CTAGs that will show where they can find this compliance information. So for that, we'll get that out and probably either this coming weeks or the following weeks to give you guys some resources around CTAGs that you can use at the end of the school year here with especially with those seniors who are leaving your courses that you know are going towards post-secondary at one of Ohio's public colleges or universities. Question, what about students that are concentrators in both ag and engineering courses? Who reports them both? I'm assuming in this question that this is all at the same district. And so again, the student can only be a concentrator in one program area. And so the district will determine locally which program of concentration to report the student. So that still continues to be a reporting issue that we're working through of a students in multiple programs of concentration within a single provider. And so it does become a local determination on which area they would report them. Again, the tiebreaker should be the amount of seat time. So if they took an engineering course for less seat time than maybe what they took all their ag courses, then the ag pathway should win out in that tiebreaker. And then Matt, this question I think relates to Leah's comments at the very beginning. Are we going to have in-person activities next year is the question, and kind of frame that with what Leah had provided us.
Sure, I think the answer to that would certainly be, boy, we certainly hope so. We do think that we, as of right now, we're hoping and planning for to deliver certain components specifically in person. But it kind of is like Lee had mentioned too, paying attention to what local district policies are and one's, your all's ability to deliver instruction and what that looks like this fall. It certainly looks like we're approaching something very similar, more similar to 2019 than what we were in 2020 from that standpoint. So yes, that is definitely our goal. And we're definitely looking to do as much of that as possible. And speaking of in-person activities, don't forget that Ohio FFA Camp is open and in person. So please make sure that if you're one of those districts that have the ability to travel and you'd like to get your students involved with some in-person activities, there's no better way to kick that off than to get them to Ohio FFA Camp and embrace that opportunity that we have currently available and made available for this summer.
Matt, that appears to be all the questions that we had come in. Oh, here's one more. Has there been a timeline presented about when they will make a decision on national convention?
I would say that the ag education community will probably hear more about national convention plans from National FFA within the next 30 days or so as they finalize their discussions. But as far as I'm aware of, there's not a hard deadline to where they have set to make an announcement to the field, but I'm just anticipating that we would all see something sometime within the next 30 days. That's an unofficial answer to that question, but that's just my thoughts.
All right, well, we went past our time. Appreciate those who hung on with us. The recording should be posted early next week. We'll get it down and scrub it to get the opening and closing right, and then get that posted to the Ohio FFA YouTube channel, and also under teacher resources as well, if you'd like to reflect back on it. But thank you all, and happy Teacher Appreciation Week.